right, guys. Hey, this week we're going to be doing some guard breaks, do some basic guard passing and a little intermediate guard passing. First, I want to make sure that we start to break down some of our component movements. So the first one is break, fall to combat, stand up. In case you get swept while you're doing some standing guard passing, we want to make sure people are falling correctly and not getting hurt. All right, so basic guard break, feet together, crossing our hands on our shoulders. Break fall. We're sitting down like we're in a chair. I'm gonna keep my hands on my shoulders until my butt hits the mat. All right, what I don't wanna do is I wanna break the natural habit of trying to post, trying to break our falls with our arms, because that's when we're gonna get hurt. All right, so arms crossed, sit in a chair, we're falling back until our butt hits, and we're slapping the mat to stop our momentum. Notice the back of my head did not hit the mat. I'm keeping my chin tucked. All right, so that's part of it is falling safely now in terms of the combat stand-up. I'm gonna put one foot on the mat, opposite hand. I wanna get up, I wanna be able to get everything off of the mat. This foot comes back to this opposite quadrant where if I draw this line from where my foot to where my hand would intersect, here and then up. So one more time, break, fall to combat, stand up, arms crossed on the chest, sit in the chair, chin tucked. I go back until my butt hits the mat, then I slap very hard to stop my momentum. Foot, opposite hand, everything up, combat stand up. All right, guys, so the next component movement is our log splitter to the icebreaker. Right, so I want to imagine, like we talked about last week, that I'm in somebody's closed guard with my good base, triangle between my knees, my feet, my butt down onto my heels with my good posture. All right, when we do our log splitter, I'm gonna have hands on hips, I'm gonna have elbows inside, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shift the base of my triangle so that I have one knee right in their butt crack, okay? So I'm gonna imagine my hands are on my opponent's hips, I'm pinning them to the mat, I'm shifting them base. Now notice this leg of the triangle goes pretty far back, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this as my wedge to open the person's guard. Now, what I see a lot of people doing when we press straight back, they go very far back and then they kind of have to stand up like this. And what I want us to realize is that as I go back and I put my weight and I commit my weight here, this gets very light so that I can come right up without giving my opponent a second to close the distance and come back in. And so the idea is I'm getting used to shifting my weight from here to here so that this gets very light and I can come up very quickly. All right, so what I don't want is that everybody's here and their weight is so far over here that after they break, they have to then open up and then come back in. So the idea is I'm here in my good guard position. I've got my good base, I've got my good posture, pinning the hips, moving the break point of my triangle, or of my base here. I'm moving all my weight to here to this back leg, so this front leg gets very light and I can very quickly come up. All right, guys, so the next component movement we're going to talk about is windshield wiper, and I want to make sure that everybody understands what I talk about when I say that. And so the idea is I'm here on all fours. I want my legs to look like the windshield wiper in a car, okay? So the idea is as this comes up, I'm pivoting on my knees, I'm coming over like this. It's very simple, okay? When I say windshield wiper, this is all we're doing with our legs, just like this. All right, guys, so the next drill we're gonna do is the candlestick position and then the candlestick position to the get up. All right, so a very fundamental move is getting back with my weight on my shoulders, getting my hips up, and using my core to make sure I have built up nice and strong. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be here in this seated position. I'm gonna rock back. I'm gonna put all my weight on my shoulders. So I'm gonna try to extend my core so that everything is aligned right up to the ceiling. So the idea is I'm rocking back. I'm using my elbows to make a strong base, like a trapezoid between my elbows and my shoulders. And my hips are coming up, and I can balance for a second if I have to. So this position here, where I'm up like this, we're calling this the candlestick position. Now, what I see a lot of people doing, especially some of my upper belts, like this, right? And yeah, I'm up on my shoulders, but my hips aren't very high off the ground. And this is garbage. I'm gonna get smashed all the time. I'm not very powerful. Where a lot of my power comes from just having my hips up like this. All right, so when we talk about getting to the candlestick position, being able to hold it, we're tightening our abs, we're having our hips high. Then we're going to use that as a component to get up. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that candlestick position. I'm going to pick a side, that leg goes underneath the other leg. So when I say right, my right leg goes back, I rock over this knee, and I drive up. When I say left, my left leg goes down and I rock over this knee. And notice my hips come forward at the top. All right, so this is marginal. This is what we're aiming for. All right, guys, so another one of the warm-up drills we're gonna be doing as part of our our component movements is our idiot sweep and then our lumberjack sweep. And this is when somebody comes to me standing and they are dumb enough to have their feet in a line where I can have access to both of them. And so just the joke that I tell the kids class is, what do you get when you have your feet in a square stance? You get what you deserve, okay? You get idiot swept. So the idea is for this first idiot sweep, I'm coming and I'm blocking these heels very quickly so that he cannot move back, okay? If I take too long, he's just gonna take a big back step like that. I did nothing. So I have to very quickly block, push very assertively on his hips, and I do my combat stand-up. Notice James did his break fall on the way down. He didn't try to stop himself, he didn't try to post. All right, now I'm dumb enough to stand square. He's gonna block, he's gonna push. I do my break fall, he does his combat stand-up, and we're going back and forth, 10 times each. All right, guys, and so the next component movement is our lumberjack sweep. So again, this is a situation where my opponent has made the mistake of standing square to me, and he's a little bit closer where I can actually grab both of his legs with my hands. Okay, so whether it's gi where I have the gi pants or no gi where I just grab the ankles, the idea is he's standing square. I'm able to control both with my hands. Now, I can do this lumberjack sweep one of two ways. I can go feet and hips, this is pretty powerful. Or a lot of times I want to maintain inside control and I just go shin in, active toes behind the knees. When I do this, active toes behind the knees, I'm trying to make a V with my legs. So I make this V and then I open up. And James does his break fall. All right, I want to maintain control of this because this will help me with my passes later. I just do my get up like we talked about. And then I'm dumb enough to stand square. He grabs control. And I do my break fall and he stands up. We're going to go back and forth 10 times. All right, so before we get going, this was in a little bit of last week's, but I want to make sure that we record this again because it is very, very important. When I'm in somebody's closed guard, a couple of things I want to make sure that I maintain. I wanted to maintain my good base and my good posture. We talk about my base. If my knees are together and my butt's up here, I am very unstable. I want to make sure I have this nice triangle between my knees and my feet. My butt as low down to my heels as I can. I know there are sometimes flexibility issues and people can only come down so far. That's totally fine. What I do not want, what we never want, is for people's feet to be out like this. You are going to get your ankle broken. I know a lot of people think they have a little bit more control, or they're able to get a little bit lower if they do this. It is not worth the risk. Always feet in, and then if you have to sacrifice with a little more distance here, that's fine. Ideally, we're down like this, okay? So that's my good base. Now I'm pretty stable here. Now when I talk about posture, all I mean is my head is over my hips, okay? So if my head is forward like this, it is not over my hips, this is bad posture. Now a lot of people want to overcorrect and they lean pretty far back. This is equally as bad. My head is not over my hips, this is not good posture. So when we talk about good posture, all I really mean is head over my hips. And ideally I want my elbows inside control. I want my elbows turned in and connected to my ribs here. All right, so those are some of the keys we're gonna be talking about today. All right, so I'm gonna be inside James's closed guard. Okay, notice he's got his hips up, and if you can see, his hips are actually off the ground. This is where most of his power comes from, this little bit of distance between his hips and the mat, okay? Now again, we talked about I have my good base, I got my triangle here, I've got my good posture, I want my elbows inside, and ideally I want to be controlling his hips, okay? Now, for these basic guard breaks to work, I need to make sure that I have his hips pinned to the mat, and I want to be using my weight to do this. If I'm just using my muscles, Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but I'm gonna get tired very, very quickly, okay? So in a no-gi setting, I just have to keep my thumbs in, kind of make these little pedestals with my hands, and I can straighten my arms and put my weight down here. In a gi situation where grips are legal, I actually prefer to grip, and that makes it a little more stable. The point is, I want to make sure that as I transition my base, that I keep his hips pinned to the mat. And we'll get into why that's important in a little while. So step one with this guard break is pinning my opponent's hips to the mat, okay? And now, just like we talked about earlier, I need to move the base, one base, into breaking this down, because I have to create pressure to move back to open this guard here. All right, so whether I'm hands out or whether I'm gripping, I need to move my base of my triangle. I'm gonna put one knee right into my opponent's butt crack, knee on taint, okay? I have to move this knee back to give myself someplace to go, all right? Now I see a lot of people kind of pushing up and back this way. I wanna go straight back, like this, all right? And as we talked about, as my weight goes back, I don't wanna go so far back that I come out here like this and create space. I wanna go back enough that my weight is over this back leg, that this leg can come up very quickly, and this is called the icebreaker position. Very important that I get this knee up as quickly as I can, because it prevents him from being able to regard, okay? Now, ideally, I'm doing this in such a way that there's not a tremendous amount of space here, because a skilled opponent will find a way to invade that space and use it against me. So ideally, I want to close this space up as much as I can, but that's not as important as getting the knee up, okay? So we talk about one more time. It's the log splitter to icebreaker position. The log splitter is the guard break. The icebreaker is just getting that knee up so that they can't regard. Controlling my opponent's hips, making sure they're pinned to the mat. I'm using my weight to do this as much as possible. I got my good posture. I'm moving one knee into their butt crack, other knee goes back. I'm going straight back. My weight is on my back leg so that this can come up into this icebreaker position. And notice I kept this nice and tight, so it's very hard for him to use this against me. And that's going to be the basis for a lot of the basic guard passes we're doing today. Are you ready? Okay. All right, guys, now we're going to move on from that guard break into our first pass. Okay, so we're going to do our log splitter to the icebreaker into the double understack pass. All right, so just like we talked about, I'm controlling my opponent's hips. I'm moving my base. I'm breaking the guard. I'm coming up. Okay. Now, all three of our basic guard passes are going to start from here. All right, I got my knee up so that he can't regard. Now, I want to have either both arms in or both arms out. For this pass, I'm going to go both arms in. So I swim them in, and look, I need to make sure that my chin gets as close to his waistband as possible. So as I come in, I'm getting very, very low, all right? Now, what I wanna make sure is I bring my arms and I control my opponent's waist here, okay? I wanna make sure that his hamstrings are on my shoulders. If he's able to open up and get them on my biceps, I'm in trouble, okay? So as I get this in here, I at the very least wanna get this gable grip and bite down, all right? If you're a little bit longer like me, you might have to even come up to the forearms or to your elbows. But the idea is I want to be able to pinch here. The lower my chin is, the better things are going to be. All right? So I got my double under. Now I need to move on to the stack. I need to put all of my opponent's weight onto his shoulders. Now there's two ways I can do this. If you're about the same size, I can just posture up and drag him into me, which is normally what I do here. If there is a weight difference, a size difference, what I might have to do is I might have to walk up and replace my knees here. Either way, my opponent's weight is now on his shoulders, okay? This is a pressure pass. I want to put as much pressure onto my opponent as I can. This is where it starts to get uncomfortable for them. All right, so I stack them up. Now, I need to pick a side. The no-gi version of this, I'm just going to cup, and I'm going to pick a side. I'm going to go over the trap here. And I'm going to pull into this. I want to put this knee as close to my opponent's nose as I can. Okay, this hand is going to come to a waistband. All right, so I was being a little bit gentle there because I needed to have breath to explain.
This is where it starts to get uncomfortable for my opponent. Up, cup, tailbone. I'm on my toes. I'm driving in knees to nose. This is where it starts to get uncomfortable for them. They want you to pass at this point. I'm pulling, I'm pushing, I'm compressing my opponent. All right, my sternum is in their hamstring, driving their knee in. I walk, walk, walk 90 degrees. I look up for the pass. I'm checking the hip, shoulder of justice. Okay? Every drill we do today, we're maintaining our position for 3 seconds before we move on. I'm only going to count reps where we maintain for 3 seconds. All right, thanks. All right, so now we're going to do the gi version of that same double understack pass. Very, very similar, but a couple of key differences. Basically, the ability to establish grips makes this much more powerful. Now, a couple of pointers in the gi to control my opponent's hips. A lot of times, you'll see people do the burrito roll, or they'll do chest and hips here. These are all perfectly good variations, but for today's purposes, we're just going to grab gi pants, elbows in like this to establish our pressure on the hips. All right, so same log splitter to icebreaker, exact same double under. I'm still getting very, very low. Coming up underneath, making sure the hamstrings are on my shoulders, very, very tight here. Stacking my opponent up, putting the weight on their shoulders. Now here's where the differences start to come. A couple of key differences. Instead of reaching over and cupping, I'm going thumb in. I'm taking a second to open this up and thumb in very, very deep. Now I can pull very, very hard. Now instead of just coming onto the tailbone, would you come over here real quick? I'm looking for drawstring. Okay, so now that I can really push and pull, this is much more powerful for me. Okay, I can push and pull, but really I need to sprawl out. My knees need to be away. I need to be driving with my toes. You hear your opponent breathe out, you know you're doing it right. Again, I walk, walk, walk. It gets worse for every degree. I look up. I establish my shoulder of justice. I check the hip. I count to 3, and then we're good to go. All right, guys, so starting from this icebreaker position. All right, now I'm going to go to my windshield wiper pass, okay? So the idea is here, I got my knee up. I might as well use this as offense. All right, so I'm going to take this knee on the same side leg. I'm just going to pin my opponent. Notice how his hips started to turn, okay? This is exactly what I want. This leg is mine now, all right? Now, I want you to come over here and look at this other leg. So circle around this way, please, okay? I need to make sure that I keep my heel kind of tight to my butt here because he might start fishing and it might create problems for later on. So as I pin this down, I need to make sure I keep this tight. It's going to make it hard for him to get in, okay? Now that I have my opponent's hips turned towards me, I want to turn his head away from me. That creates some tension in there. So if you come over here real quick, the very first thing I want to do is I want to fight for this underhook here. I want to come low. I want to kind of grab this here. And especially in no-gi, this is very important. In a gi version, I can come up here and I can become elbow in. This is the same version of control. This will come in a little bit later. But ideally, I want to come in here and I want to get low. With this hand, I want to come and I want to establish the cross face. And ideally, I want to turn his chin away from me like this with my shoulder. This creates tension in his spine by pushing his head this way and his hips this way. They do not like this. All right? So, fight for my underhook. I fight for my cross face. I'm coming at least with my gable grip, and I'm putting a lot of weight here on my shoulder. Okay, now we talk about our windshield wiper. Okay, just like we did in the warm-ups. I'm windshield wipering my legs so that I maintain control of this leg. Okay, so I advance my position by windshield wipering and maintaining control of the leg. Now, before I remove this leg, I want you to come over here real quick, please. All right, I need to make sure I maintain control of this cross face. I'll lift up and I'll grab in the armpit a little bit. In the gi, if I can grab material, that's even better. Okay, now I have this hand to play with. Very important, I'm going to take this hand and I'm going to slide through and check my opponent's hip right here before I move on. All right, a lot of people will keep this here. They'll come out and they'll check the hip with the knee, which is okay, but I give him a chance to fight back. Ideally, I don't want to give them any chance to fight back. So I slide in and I check the hip, and then I remove, check the hip, shoulder of justice, establish my side control for 3 seconds. All right, guys, so the last basic guard pass we're gonna do today is the knee cut pass. And again, I'm from my icebreaker position. I switched it up a little bit just because of the way we're set up. I broke with the opposite knee this time. Okay, so the last windshield wiper pass, I went over the same side leg. For the knee cut pass, I'm going over the opposite leg. And the beginning is the same. I need to control my opponent's leg by putting my knee down. Okay, so my toes are on the ground, my knee's on the ground, my shin is controlling his leg. All right, now, very, very important, I cannot go any further until I have some control over his shoulder. So, especially in a no-gi situation, it's very, very important that I come up and I establish this underhook here. In a gi situation, I can grab the collar and I can come elbow in. If I don't do either of these things, I'm handing my opponent a back take. All right, so very, very important. I'm coming for the underhook. I'm coming for the gi, elbow in to prevent the back take. I'm here, I'm here. All right, so before I move on, I need to make sure that I have some stability. This foot comes out and plants out so that I can drive into my opponent a little bit. Now I'm fighting for this arm, okay? I want to establish wrist is okay. In the gi, I can pull up, this is pretty good. In no gi, this is not so great. So ideally, I'm kind of coming down by the elbow. I'm grabbing the little knobbly bits here and I'm pulling straight up to the ceiling. It's much harder for me to flare his elbow out this way. He's much weaker if I pull straight up. Okay, now I have my head up right here so I can talk. Ideally, when I'm doing this for real, I've answered the phone here. It's much more secure. Now, where I see a lot of people jack this up a little bit is they slide their knee this way, kind of towards their opponent's head, which gives him a chance to come to quarter guard, right? Which gives me other problems to deal with. What I want to do is I want to slide down his leg this way here, which lets it come out. Now, what I'm doing is I'm invading the space that I've created with this leg to isolate the arm, crossing it over, coming in from my shoulder of justice, check the hip, establish my position for 3 seconds, and then we're good. All right, guys, so those were all of the beginner guard breaks and passes. Now we're gonna get into some intermediate stuff. Now, before we get into it, I wanna talk about a couple things of where I'm safe in guard, okay? I'm safe with my base, with my posture, and my elbows in. I'm safe here, right? I'm also safe, hands and biceps, creating this space here in the sternum. I'm relatively safe here, okay? In gi, I can also open up, have these grips on these lapels and punch down the armpits. I'm safe here, okay? Anywhere else, I am in danger and I have to know that. Now, as I stand up to some of these standing guard breaks, it's very important that I have controlled my opponent's biceps, because as I stand up, I'm going to give him access to my legs, all right? If I haven't controlled this, he's gonna have unfettered access and he's gonna be in control, which is what I don't want, especially if I'm dumb enough to stand up like this. We've gotten into those situations where we did our drills where I can get idiot swept or I can get lumberjack swept. All right, so it's very important that as I stand up, I have control of my opponent's arms. I don't really mind if they have access to one leg as long as I deny them access to both legs. And what I'm looking to do is I need to stagger my stance, one close, one far away. Okay, so as I go, what I might need to do is I might need to put one leg up close, and this one's a little bit further back. And look, I have found this very same position with my knee in his butt crack as I did before. Now, as I have that, I'm gonna come back up to my opponent's hips and start to pressure straight down. And I just did that same guard break, but instead of going back, I went straight down. And I had a couple extra steps with my footwork to get in there, right? And now we're into those same 3 passes we just did. Double under, knee cut, and windshield wiper. Good? All right, guys, so the next intermediate tech we're gonna do is the Guitar Hero pass. And so I tried to break the guard from my knees here, wasn't working. I tried to break the guard by standing up and doing the log splitter from standing, it wasn't working. So I have to move on to something else. And so remember, when we talked about the standing log splitter, I had hands in both biceps, okay? For whatever reason, the person was too good, their guard was too tight, I couldn't break it. So now I have to move on, I wanna go on my 2-on-1s, okay? So, instead of 1-on-1 here, I'm gonna go 2-on-1. I'm gonna concentrate all of my weight on my opponent's arm here. I'm going to willingly give them access to the opposite side leg, all right? So as I pin this down here, I'm gonna step up here. The closer I can get my shin into their armpit here, the better. And they're probably gonna underhook here. Totally fine, I don't really mind. Okay, what I can't do is I can't let them have this one free so that as I stand up, they can possibly swing in and get the other one. So I have to make sure I have good contact here, good pin here. All right, so from here, as I stand up, I'm staggering my stance. There's no way that he can reach this leg here because I have my weight here. Now what I wanna do is I wanna pin this knee to his far hip here, and this breaks the guard. There's a lot of pressure there. I'm controlling his legs here with my lat. I still have pressure on his leg. I don't really care if he has access to this leg. He doesn't have many options. Now I need to clear this leg. So I'm gonna make a big swing from his head to his feet. Now just swinging my arm, I don't clear this. So as I swing this arm and I get about here, I need to thrust my hips, throw it past. As soon as his legs go down, I have to come down and sprawl hips away. All right, ideally, I'm coming down my shoulder right here and I'm checking the hip. All right, so full speed, what this looks like. 2-on-1. Standing up, my shin's in his armpit. Fully up, staggered stance, pin this knee to his hip, throw, sprawl, establish my position for 3 seconds. All right, guys, last pass of the day. And this is where we get into a little bit of throwing out bait and trickery because everything we're trying to force isn't working. So now we have to outsmart our opponents, okay? So this all starts with throwing out some very obvious bait. And what I'll do is I'll fuck around with my one-on-ones here. I will intentionally step up and give them access to this leg. If they're not biting right away, I'll even come back and I'll stomp to get their attention up here. And all of a sudden they'll underhook. Almost always they'll underhook because there's a lot of offensive options from here, from the person on bottom. All right, now for the purposes of drilling today, we're gonna wait for our opponent to open their guard before we move forward. In real life, I'm going as soon as they underhook the leg, but we'll end up in some kind of funky positions that might put a lot of strain on people's backs. So for the purposes of drilling safely, we're gonna let them open their guard from here. Now, once they're in this position, I'm gonna take my hands, commit them to the mat as close to their hip as possible. All right, the further you get out, the sloppier this gets and you end up in weird positions. So hands on the mat, as close to their hips. I'm putting most of my weight here. Now I'm gonna throw my legs over their head. I wanna ride hip to hip. As I do, I'm coming around, catching my cross face, checking the hip. If I can catch the butcher in transition, I'll catch the butcher, but it's more important to establish my position. All right, so again, I'm here. If I step up, I give them access over here. And that's our helicopter pass.